T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
What's going on, everybody? This is the Denim Dungeon. I am your host, Brian Rennick, a contributor at 49ers Web Zone, and I am joined, as always, by my fellow contributor, my co-host, but most importantly, my good buddy, Tim Sprinkles. Tim, how's it going tonight, man?
Pretty darn good, Brian. How are you, man?
I'm doing good. So we are trying this live stream thing out. This is, I guess, technically our second time, although the first time we didn't let anyone know, so we didn't have any viewers. It looks like right now we have some people that are watching. We appreciate you guys, and we are going to actually, I'm going to have Tim introduce. We do have a special guest tonight who's going to join us. We are going to talk about the Seahawks game. We're going to talk about the offseason a little bit, and he is going to really kind of help us take a look at that quarterback situation and the D Ford situation, because he is, well, you tell us, Tim.
He's a doctor. Well, okay. So I've gone through my career, everything that I've done with sports and playing college football, and I've suffered quite a few injuries. And there's always been one person who I could rely on, somebody who, goes back in my own personal history. We grew up together. He went and did the medical route, and he was a top-notch athlete himself. He was competing at a very high level. He was a tennis player. He also played baseball. And then he went on to become a physical therapist, and he specializes in kind of understanding both what the athlete goes through and being able to fix the body. So, needless to say, he needs no more introduction from me. I'd love for him to come on and explain his credentials. He's going to do it far better than me anyway. So we'd like to welcome Dr. Colin Moulton to the show.
How's it going, Colin?
Hey, what's happening, fellas?
There he is.
Appreciate you having me on with you guys.
Look at that guy. Look at that guy. Give everybody your credentials. Let them know kind of your history and what brought you to here.
Like you said, I'm a physical therapist. I've been a physical therapist for 11 years. I live and work down in San Diego, and I'm board certified orthopedic clinical specialist, and a manual physical therapist. Treat a lot of sports injuries, spine injuries, post-op injuries. I played tennis at Sacramento State for 4 years, and still play some tennis, play baseball still competitively when we can have a season. We're not locked down away from each other.
You know who else played tennis a lot when he was growing up? It was Josh Rosen, quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, somebody wrote a really good article about Josh Rosen. How many views is that at now, Brian?
That's a good question. Last time I checked, it was like 66,000, which was, I've never done anything like that. I've never had that many people read something that I wrote or just even know what my name is before. And so, so Colin is also a 49er fan, which
lifelong Bears fan.
Which is a good thing, because this is a 49ers podcast. But hey, if you are listening or watching and you aren't a 49er fan, doesn't mean that we don't like you. It just means that you may not enjoy as much of this content as you would if we were talking about your team. But our 49ers ended their season on Sunday, and it was a disappointing season, to say the least. Tons of expectations that were really kind of shattered with injuries. Just tons and tons and tons of injuries. And Sunday was no exception. There were 13 of the projected 22 starters that the 49ers had going into the season missed the game on Sunday against the Seahawks. And they, honestly, they put up a valiant effort. Both Tim and I predicted a really a Seahawks trouncing, and the game was 6-3 at halftime. And I watched the game with Tim at his place, and up until about 2.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, it really did seem like the 49ers might have been able to pull that one out. But unfortunately, they did not, and they lost that game 26-23.
We can officially put the revenge tour to bed. That is now.
I feel like we could
over and done with
a while ago.
Yeah, we can move on from that. You're right. The 49ers did put forth a valiant effort. In all honesty, I think Sunday worked out better for the 49ers than first expected. I know that they played extremely well. You never want to see him lay an egg against the Seahawks. Yes, I wanted to see him win, but hey, another loss in that column goes to, we're up to 10 losses, and with some help from other teams in the NFL, that brought us up to the number 12 draft pick. So not complete. It wasn't just a waste of a Sunday. We got to see some good football. The 49ers moved up in the draft. We then got to see Alex Smith win the division for the Washington football team. And that was an interesting game. But, we can just put to bed the 2020 season for the 49ers at this point. And as they say in any good team sport, you know what? We're done with 2020, but now the 2021 season starts today.
On to 2021. On to Cleveland. That's Bill Belichick. It's fun to say. Colin, did you get to watch the game?
I did not. I caught the post game, but I was doing some family stuff, and
did you expect a win?
No, I did not.
Good.
But let me tell you this: the first time I checked the score and the Niners had a lead in the fourth quarter, I was surprised as shit. I was like, I'm missing a good game.
and honestly, it was surprisingly so. Which I don't know.
Well,
I don't know if that's more about the Niners or more about the Seahawks. I'm not sure.
Well, we all know that
defense was this year, and that wasn't good. And the Niners definitely underperformed, I felt, against that lousy of a defense. That was as bad of a defense as they played all season and
I don't know if you didn't get to see it, Colin, but Jamal Adams, the superstar safety that the Seahawks gave up, multiple first round picks for, he was coming in on a blitz, and Jerick McKinnon gave him a pretty strong shoulder, and it looked like it might have separated his AC joint in his shoulder. I couldn't necessarily tell, but he left the game and he never returned, and he seemed like he was in a lot of pain. Just from what how difficult is it if he did suffer a sprained AC joint, how difficult is it for him would it be for him to come back next week and play?
I mean, that would depend on really the severity of the AC sprain. I want to go back and see the tape on that, see what position his arm was in, how he hurt it, and then what is the team release as far as the severity of it. For who was this against?
This was on Sunday.
Yeah, this was Jerick McKinnon. Jerick McKinnon hit Jamal Adams, and Jamal Adams was the one that went out of the game. There, the Seahawks safety.
Okay. Yeah. For a safety to be able to come back and play next week, possible, depending on the severity. If it's just a sprain of the ligaments, then should just be, can he tough it out and go play? If it's, one where it's bad enough where you've got a partial tear in the ligament, that would probably hinder him quite a bit more. So that would probably just come down to the severity and what kind of mobility he feels like he can have with his shoulder and with his arm.
Well, I never wish injury on anybody, but I guess I will wish that he is not tough enough to make it out there next weekend, and he, his vagina hurts too much, and he has to sit.
I was gonna say, I'm not, I'll never root for an injury, but I will root for an injury to keep a player out, especially if he's on the Seahawks. So that's
there's nothing permanent
okay
about somebody like hurting their arm. The guy's
Right,
gonna have a
that's true.
perfectly happy life for the rest, other than missing a game. I see no sin in wishing that kind of harm on somebody.
Yeah. So again, the 49ers did perform better than I think most people anticipated, especially with the fact that early in the week there was, and Kyle Shanahan even confirmed that they were a little bit worried that they wouldn't be able to field a full team on Sunday due to injuries and COVID. So, every time that they panned the camera up to the press box and you saw Jimmy Garoppolo, Trent Williams, Raheem Mostert, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, like it's just a superstar, lineup just sitting in the press box watching the game. And the likes of Justin School and Colton McKivitz and CJ Beathard are playing on the offensive side of the ball. And our boy River Craycraft and Kendrick Bourne, those are your two top receivers along with Richie James. And you're thinking to yourself, well, this, the Seahawks are literally playing for a possible number 1 seed in the NFC, and for the game to be 6-3 at half, and then for Seattle to need, a touchdown in the last 3 minutes of the game to take the lead. I think that's a valiant performance for the 49ers. And so we did want to take a look. Normally when we do our game reviews, we have our who struck gold and who struck out. So we're going to run through that real quick. Again, it wasn't a game that necessarily took a lot of analysis. Although the one thing that I will say that I thought was most interesting was that, again, this is a Seahawks offense that was just unbelievable in at the beginning of the season, and Russell Wilson was putting together an MVP season, and then they kind of fell off, but still this was a team that is fighting for the number 1 seed. And the 49ers defense, which again, there were guys like Josiah Coatney. Anybody know who that is? I know that I didn't know who that was. He had meaningful snaps in this game, and they still held the Seattle Seahawks offense to under 300 total yards, which I thought was pretty damn impressive. And so,
outside of one really impressive throw from Russell Wilson, he looked pretty pedestrian. And
he did,
it
for
looked,
sure.
And it looked like, CJ Beathard was pretty much playing snap for snap with him, if you will. I know that we made a nice comment and tweet out in the game that CJ Beathard looks an awful lot like the lead singer of Nickelback.
Well, he especially did in college. Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
like you've never seen those two in the same room together. That's how much they looked alike. And we had some fun with that. But yeah, the 49ers outgained the Seahawks 328 total yards to 280. They held that Seahawks offense to 280 yards. And I actually heard Matt Barrows say today that they held the Seahawks offense to 3 total yards in the third quarter. 3 yards in the third quarter.
Wow.
So it was a game that they could have won for sure. Honestly, am I mad that they lost? No, because they do have better draft position. But it was a valiant effort from a team that never quit in a season where it would have been probably pretty damn easy to hang it up, with all the injuries, with COVID, with having to move to Glendale, Arizona for over a month, and in that month was the holiday season. Like this was a season that could have easily, ended at 3-13 or 4-12. And the fact that they were 6-10 and honestly in the playoff hunt until week 15, It just to me, it says a lot about the coaching staff, the job that Kyle Shanahan did as head coach, but also what Robert Saleh did with that defense. A significantly more impressive defensive coaching performance this season than even last season, with all the injuries.
That's the biggest offseason question: is how do they replace that?
Yeah, and that's yeah. I mean, and you know, we're gonna get to the offseason there here in a little bit, but honestly, like, you know, that game, I don't think anybody performed poorly. Normally we do a fool's gold. We didn't come up with anything, but first off, let's go ahead and give out our El Jefe Boss Player of the Week. So again, El Jefe Tequila, the drink of the Denim Dungeon podcast. And we named the player of the week after them. It's the El Jefe Boss Player of the Week. And we're going to give it to Tristan Vizcaino, the kicker, who was signed off of the Minnesota Vikings practice squad 4 days before the game. 4 days before the game, because Robbie Gould signed an extension, a 1-year extension, and then promptly went on the COVID list. So they signed this kid off the Vikings practice squad because they couldn't bring anyone off the street because they wouldn't be able to play in time because of COVID protocols. And so he went out and promptly went 3 for 3 on field goals and 2 for 2 on point after attempts, and really actually looked really impressive. You know, I think Tim, you and I both commented on how strong his leg seems, and that guy probably made himself some money in that game. So good for him. Yeah, so he was responsible for 11 of the 49ers 23 points. So we're going to give the El Jefe Boss Player of the Week to Tristan Vizcaino.
Well done, buddy. You deserved it.
That's right. Hell of an effort. All right, so let's look at our 24 karat gold. Again, these are the players that, you know, had the outside of the Boss Player of the Week, had the biggest impact. George Kittle, who, you know, arguably anytime he steps on the football field has a tremendous impact. He had a 78.7 PFF grade. Didn't do a whole lot in the pass game, but he did have an absolutely incredible catch, which is floating around 49ers Twitter as a phone wallpaper now. And
thanks to you, Brian.
Yeah, I had a good weekend when it came to content creation with the article, and then a tweet that went a little bit viral as well. So, but yeah, George Kittle, and then, you know, obviously just the blocks that he has in the run game and the effect that he has on the run game. The 49ers didn't have the same kind of rushing performance that they did against the Cardinals. But, you know, they still, in a game where Seattle's going to key on the run game, you know, they still managed to eke out 86 yards on the ground, which isn't terribly impressive. But again, when a team is keyed up to stop it, to still get 86, I think is impressive. And George Kittle's a big part of that. And then also we have here Eric Armstead, who had 4 total tackles, 3 hurries, and a batted pass. Again, not an incredible performance, but nobody had a real standout performance outside of obviously Tristan Vizcaino. But yeah, so for our 24 karat gold, we've got George Kittle and Eric Armstead. Tim, what'd you think?
You know, it's good to see those guys actually performing well, because those are the guys that you've paid a ton of money to. And that's what you expect from somebody like George Kittle. He needs to make those spectacular plays, but then he also needs to do what he does in the run game, kind of week in and week out. And Baldy's breakdowns, I don't know if you got to see the one of he highlighted George Kittle's first play back, and it was a stretch zone read to the right side
Cardinals?
Against the Seahawks this game. And so the first play of the game, stretch zone read right. Jeff Wilson runs the ball. You have so he has to reach block right on the Seahawks, and he's able to not only reach block him within 2 steps. He does a fantastic job, but he does such a good job of getting his hips low and exploding up through the block, and they call it snapping your hips. And it's when you're able to use kind of the strength you have in your core, and he actually lifted Wright up off the ground, and you can watch Wright's feet get lifted, and he gets turned and moved. And the play was designed where Kyle Juszczyk was supposed to come in and chip block and then move up to the second level. And Juice got to him and looked at him and was like, I got nothing to do here. I'm just going to continue and move on.
Moving on.
Moving on to the next level. And it's just one of those blocks, one of those things that George Kittle does that the average football fan, the couch GM, if you will, they're going to look at stats. They're going to look at, a Travis Kelce with how many receptions, how many yards, how many touchdowns does a player have? Obviously, and they'll say he's the better tight end. But week in and week out, George Kittle does the little things that not everybody does in the run game, which is so hard. And then he also makes spectacular catches, and he runs his tail off after he catches the football. And we talked about it, and I think it's starting to get noticed that the way you tackle George Kittle now is you dive at his legs. Nobody wants to square up with him. They're just going to try and untie his shoelaces and hit him, in the shins,
which is scary.
It's unfortunate, and that leads to injuries. And it's just one of those things. I'm worried for George Kittle because he takes every single catch so personally. It seems like he wants to just run through the face.
Wants to score on every reception.
Yeah,
absolutely. So, Dr. Collins, since we do have you on, can you talk a little bit? So I didn't know the cuboid bone was a thing. Apparently it's a bone in your foot, and that is the bone that Kittle broke. Is that something that as fans we should be worried about moving forward, or is that kind of just a freak occurrence that is unlikely to happen again?
Yeah, no, he should be good. Bone breaks, as long as they're given enough time to heal up, generally, he should be fine with that. It's a little different if it was a soft tissue injury, like an ankle sprain, like a ligament sprain or tear or something like that. So yeah, no, with that injury, he should be good.
Where is that bone in the foot, and how do you break it?
Well, generally through impact. It's we've got these tarsal bones, little kind of like in our wrists, we've got little carpal bones. Our ankles set up very similarly, and so the cuboid is one of the little bones in the base of the metatarsals that kind of helps create a stable structure, weight-bearing structure. But again, with the impact and the load these guys are putting on their body and the different ways their body kind of contorts, and you break things in different ways that us normal day life people don't do.
And what is the difference between like breaking that bone and what Deebo Samuel did, which is a Liz Frank injury?
It's just different bone. The Liz Frank injury is more the metatarsal bone, and so it's just a bone that's happens to have somebody's name attached to the fracture.
Fair enough.
But yeah, same thing. Generally given the right course of time to heal and offloading it, and then they'll usually probably cast it or immobilize it in a walking boot for a while, and then gradually get back. You're supposed to generally, most of us will gradually get back to weight-bearing activities.
Right.
You're superhuman like George Kittle. You get back in 6 weeks and you're going full bore again.
Or if you're George Kittle, you tell reporters that you want to be back in 2 weeks, and the team has to literally keep you from coming back.
Yeah.
I love that guy. All right, let's move on to our 14 karat gold. We're going to run through these real quick. We've got two cornerbacks on here. Ahkello Witherspoon, who had another really nice game. I mean, he did give up the game-winning touchdown, which does bring the game that he played down a little bit. But what I loved was, he was on coverage against DK Metcalf a couple times, and he had one coverage snap where he had a pass breakup, and then he just absolutely flexed up on DK Metcalf, which I thought was hysterical because I think DK Metcalf could eat Witherspoon for lunch. But he was in coverage on 6 targets, and he only gave up 2 receptions for 11 yards. Unfortunately, he had to give up that big touchdown to Lockett at the end of the game. And then Jason Verrett, who had another good game. 8 targets, gave up 6 receptions, but only for a total of 41 yards. Again, the Seahawks offense outside of Tyler Lockett really didn't do a whole lot in this game. And so the defense as a whole just played really well. Kendrick Bourne led all receivers for the 49ers with 5 receptions on 6 targets for 76 yards, which is a 12.67 yard per average reception. And then Jeff Wilson Jr., again, not a big day on the ground. He had 20 carries for 76 yards, but he also had 3 receptions for 12 yards. And then he did score those 2 touchdowns, which put him at 10 for the season, which is a pretty awesome season for Jeff Wilson Jr. And you know, again, it was a game that came down to the last few minutes in the fourth quarter. And when you're playing your JV squad, in which you've even brought up a few freshman players against, you know, the Seattle Seahawks, that's really all you can expect.
I was really impressed with just the season that Jeff Wilson Jr. had this year. I mean, let's just be real frank about it. When the season started, his name was not being mentioned at all in the running back stable of the 49ers. No one thought that he would lead the team in touchdowns this year.
Or rushing.
I mean, he's always been kind of like a touchdown like steal on a fantasy team where you go, maybe if he's suiting up this week, maybe he's going to get a couple of carries and he'll get a score or two, a vulture, if you will, from the league. I don't know if that's a great TV show. It's a good reference.
Ruxin.
But no one could have told me at that point in time in the season that Jeff Wilson Jr. was going to lead the team in rushing and touchdowns. I would have said, you're out of your mind. And for that to happen, I'm just really psyched and proud of that dude, because he worked his tail off. And not only that, he made his way through an injury mid-season. He had a high ankle sprain.
Yeah, he did.
And as a running back, I mean, I remember what it was like to get a high ankle sprain as a quarterback and being semi-mobile. I was nowhere near an NFL running back, and just cutting off of that leg, the pain that happens. And I know no high ankle sprain is kind of the same. They all kind of vary. But I just remember how much that hurt, and to see the anger and the rage that guy runs with.
He goes to a dark place, as he says.
That's right. And it was really great to see him achieve what he achieved this year. So my hat's off to Jeff Wilson Jr. I'm excited for what the future holds for him, because he has a place for sure.
Well, and he's going to be a restricted free agent this offseason, which means that the 49ers will have the first right of refusal if anybody tries to sign him to a contract. But I would assume what we're looking at next year in terms of the stable of running backs, because Coleman is gone, McKinnon is gone. You're going to look at Jeff Wilson Jr. and Raheem Mostert and likely JaMychal Hasty and probably one other running back that either, you know, they draft or it could be Austin Walter, who has been up a few times. So he has a bright future with the team for sure. And then last but not least, we have our fool's gold again in a game like this where they were expected to lose and did indeed lose, but still put up a valiant effort. I'm hard pressed to find somebody to be like, you were terrible. And so I'm going to give fool's gold in the final game of the season to the year 2020. Hardy FU to 2020, and it's on to 2021.
That's right.
All right. So here we go. Right. We're in the off season now. You know, there are a few times where I thought to myself, let's start looking to the off season. Tim was always less inclined to do that until we absolutely had to. And I appreciate that about you. I am really quick to write things off, and then, you know, I get sucked back in. And so, but as fans, you know, and content creators, we do now get to look to the off season, and it's going to be a big off season for the 49ers, for a number of reasons. But the big one is the question of, does Jimmy Garoppolo come back? Do the 49ers look to switch things up at the quarterback position. Colin, you talked about it earlier. What are they going to do? Robert Saleh, so today is called Black Monday around the NFL. It's the first Monday after the season ends.
First coach
and
firing of the season.
Exactly. And we had 3 coaches fired prior to the season ending. That was Matt Patricia in Detroit, Dan Quinn in Atlanta, and Billy O'Brien in Houston. And then, I mean, technically Adam Gase didn't lose his job on Black Monday. He lost his job like immediately after the game ended on Sunday. The Jets fired Adam Gase.
Those are like the people waiting in line for after Thanksgiving. Like
right.
He was first in line for those stores ready to go getting fired.
And then on Black Monday, Anthony Lynn of the Los Angeles Chargers and Doug Marrone of the Jacksonville Jaguars lost their job. So there are currently 6 head coach openings in the NFL across the league. And then not only that, but the GM position in Jacksonville is open. The GM position in Atlanta is open, in Detroit. And then today, John Elway stepped down as GM of the Denver Broncos and will be hiring. John Elway did what I honestly, and maybe it might still happen, but John Elway did what I think John Lynch should do, which is step down from GM. He took basically a president of football operations position, and he is going to hire a GM to work with Vic Fangio, who they've already come out and said is going to get at least one more season. And so for the 49ers, they have head coach candidates on their staff, and they have GM candidates in their front office. The GM candidates in the front office are Adam Peters, who came from Denver when Lynch became GM. So there's an automatic connection there. Also Martin Mayhew, who was a GM in Detroit years ago. He has some opportunities. And then obviously Robert Saleh. With 6 openings, I can almost guarantee you that Robert Saleh is getting one of those. So the question now becomes, who takes over for Robert Saleh? And I don't know. Here, I mean, there are options out there. There's options within the team, and then there's options out on the marketplace. And then, do the 49ers move Lynch to more of a president of football operations so that they don't lose somebody like an Adam Peters or a Martin Mayhew? And those are questions that we obviously don't have answers to now. We could definitely speculate. But what I wanted to talk about specifically was the quarterback situation and then the salary cap situation, which is kind of just a primer on, what is going to happen this offseason. So because we have Dr. Colin on, I have a question for him, and it's this. I have argued in an article on the Web Zone earlier this season that it was time to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo because he has been injured a lot. Now, those injuries with the 49ers have been an ACL tear and then I guess 2 different high ankle sprains, apparently. And then he also had a shoulder injury with the Patriots. So, as a professional, can you say somebody like Jimmy Garoppolo, who has had an ACL tear and then, 2 separate high ankle sprains and a shoulder injury, can you call him injury prone? I mean, is that something that's fair to say, or are those injuries where it doesn't really, it's just almost bad luck more than anything?
Yeah, I'd probably say that one. There's 3 totally separate types of injuries. The high ankle sprain, I agree. Like they say it's 2 separate, but to the same ankle, and when it was already injured once, and that's another injury that, first and foremost, you got to give it time for those tissues to heal. And Tim said he's had high ankle sprain. I've had a high ankle sprain myself before. I don't know if you've ever had one, Brian, but
I haven't. Can you tell us what the difference is?
Yeah, so your typical ankle sprain, you're dealing with the ligaments on the lateral part, so your lower ankle bone sticks out. You got 3 ligaments that come down from that attach into the foot bones, and you roll your ankle and you sprain those. A high ankle sprain involves the ligaments in between your tibia and your fibula, down at the very distal end of those bones. And you've got a ligament that attaches between them, and then you've got this ligamentous synostomosis material between the two of them that keeps them from moving too much. And a high ankle sprain involves that structure. And basically, the mechanism of injury can be very similar. You roll your ankle in, but doing that causes separation between your tibia and your fibula, and that sprains that. You can sprain or even partially tear it, depending on, again, severity of it. And once you damage that in that way, it takes time for that structure to be allowed to shorten back up and heal. And running on it, cutting on it with cleats on, specifically on turf, will not help that heal, and trying to do that as an NFL quarterback, it doesn't surprise me he re-injured that, maybe in a different way, but it probably wasn't totally stable enough. But I don't think that relates to the knee injury he suffered a couple of years ago.
Different leg, for sure. Different leg. Yeah.
Though not uncommon. I mean, look at Clay Thompson. It's really not uncommon to hurt the other leg in a compensatory way after you rehab that leg, an injured leg. So, but I don't know how much that in Jimmy's case contributed to the ankle sprain he suffered. Similarly, I think there was I believe, and I might be wrong, I think it was an AC joint injury, his shoulder injury. Yeah. And on his throwing shoulder, right?
Yeah.
That is a totally separate injury from the lower body injuries he's had. So, no, I wouldn't think it'd be really fair to say that he's injury prone. Any quarterback is going to be, how good of a line are you? How good of protection do you have? How good can you get around it? Tom Brady's always had really good protection and knows how to read his protection better than anybody. So he knows how to move and get away from being hurt. The better quarterback, that's how you have a long career doing it. You learn how to move generally in the pocket. The more mobile you are, the more prone you're going to be to getting yourself exposed to getting injury, and it's generally the shorter career you're going to have. But I wouldn't think in Jimmy's case that his injury history necessarily, other than the fact that the Niners have paid him a lot of money already for the time he's missed. How much do they hold that kind of in consideration? I don't know. I don't know how that plays out, but.
Well, and as far as high ankle sprains go, I mean, why are they more difficult to recover from than a traditional ankle sprain, like a lower ankle sprain? And then if he would have had that high ankle sprain on his, on his left leg, which would be his, the leg that his step leg as opposed to his plant leg, would he have been more inclined to be able to come back quicker?
I mean, I can speak a little bit to that.
He puts off the pushing off part of it, maybe, but you're still scrambling and trying to move. You need to be able to do that. That's probably the more dangerous part of the job, and being able to just move, have the footwork and the control and the proprioception that's required to get out of the way and still put yourself in a good throwing type position. When you're dealing with an injury, regardless of how much it hurts, that's in your head, and you're going to be moving in a compensatory way until it's really rehab, that could put you at more risk for injury.
Okay. What were you going to say, Tim? You said you could speak to that.
Well, I was going to say, when there's an injury to a quarterback's plant leg, whether it's any joint or an ankle sprain, and in Jimmy's case, a high ankle sprain, kind of what Colin, what you were talking about is the ligaments that are inside and kind of split the tibia and the fibula, and that's kind of holding it together. When you push off and you're trying to throw a ball down the field, there's not only you're exerting force on that lower leg, but there's also some torque in there as well, because your shoulders are turning, and as you throw, you push and turn, and your hips come through, and it seems like it's not just a normal motion like you're moving forward. It's not, the up and down motion of your dorsal flexion and plantar flexion of your foot. You like that, Colin? That's kinesiology classes coming back to me.
No doubt.
But as you start to turn and you're getting that torque, it just seems like that showed why Jimmy Garoppolo was lifting his leg on his throws when he first came back from that injury, because he couldn't push, he couldn't turn, and he couldn't trust his leg. So I'm just wondering if it was a separate high ankle sprain. Was it, in your best opinion, do you think it was because the first one didn't heal properly, or did he just kind of weaken everything else around it?
Yeah, I don't really know what to make of it was a separate ankle sprain. It's the same ankle. If it's a high ankle sprain, it's a high ankle sprain. You're dealing with the same tissues, right? So basically he either has recovered. I don't know how you fully recover from that in that quick of a time to where you're not at least feeling it. I mean, anybody who's had that injury can tell you it's going to last. Some feeling from it is going to last, a couple of months generally. And let alone when you're trying to get away from linemen.
Play professional football.
Yeah, and so there's so much to it. Yeah, like you said, the mechanics of throwing generally involve that, but how often are you throwing in a perfectly situated, well-planted position when you're a quarterback to begin with, right? You're in even odder positions, and if you don't have or haven't regained the coordination to get your footwork right to put you in a better, more optimal throwing position, you're going to put more strain on that thing too, making you more susceptible to re-injuring it.
Is this something that he and fans should be worried about going into 2021, or is there? I mean, by the time we're talking about September, right? I guess training camp. But is it just a matter of once you get enough rest, you're good to go?
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. I think now that he's got the off season to heal up, he can really do it the right way. There's not that pressure to get back on the field, try to push through. That should be something he should be able to, I would think, fully. Again, depending on severity, not knowing any of the details of really how deep the injury is, but I would think he should be able to make a full recovery and get back to 100%.
Does his inability to come back this season call to question his toughness at all?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
I've never liked that, symbolization, because at some point, guys get hurt, and the more they try to push through an injury like that, and I think we're going to talk about D Ford here in a little bit, same kind of, really kind of the same issue. The more you try to push through an injury, the more likely you are to sustain either a worse injury or just keep making it a chronic issue that it never goes away. And when you're in your 20s, early 30s, you don't want to be doing that to your body. So giving it adequate health is something that is, or adequate healing time is something that's, I think, generally overrated or underutilized and considered overrated in professional sports. But for sure. I mean, part of that's because of the pressures they're under,
right.
The financial and time-sensitive pressures they're under. As an athlete, we've all been there. You want to play. You want to say you can play.
You don't want to let your teammates down.
Right.
You've got this internal drive. You've got this feeling of myself, of this competition where, I'm better than this, or, nothing is going to stop me from achieving my goals, because, the reason that they're professional athletes is because they performed at a higher level and they did things other people weren't willing to do. And so when your body starts breaking down and you feel like, I mean, this was a case for me, was like, I just remember going, I can push through this. I'm tougher than the pain. And you always see in the movies, and you always hear about these tough guys who, pain is temporary, pride is forever. And, what's tougher, your mentals, or is the pain stronger than you? And it's always one of those things where in the short term, you always think, yeah, I'm going to push through this. But if they had somebody like you, Colin, to sit them down and say, out of the moment, your career, it would probably serve you much better to fully heal from this?
See, I don't envy like working. I grew up and got into sports medicine, thinking, oh yeah, one day maybe I'll work with a pro sports team, and I don't envy the position those guys are in, because for the most part they're getting a lot of pressure from the management to say what is this guy's condition, and the other guy's putting a lot of pressure back on him, saying I'm fine generally to get back on the field. Maybe neither side's being completely honest about it. They've got to really be able to read the situation, read the player, read the mechanics of how the player's performing to give an honest assessment of it. And that it's definitely a tough world to operate in when so much is expected of you, and you expect so much of yourself, and there's so much can be put at stake for it, that the body is usually the thing that suffers. And sometimes those consequences can end up being long term, like with things like CTE and repetitive brain damage.
Well, and speaking of long term injuries, let's move on to the other guy that we did want to talk about, and that was Dee Ford. So John Lynch came out today. Lynch and Shanahan had a press conference together, or a Zoom conference, whatever you want to call it. And one of the questions was about Nick Bosa and Dee Ford, and Lynch basically gave a thumbs up on Bosa and his recovery. And then when it came to Dee Ford, he said basically, like, I don't know. Nobody knows. And so, all we hear is that it's a back injury, and he does have a history of back injuries. And so, I mean, if you have a history of back injuries and a back injury kept you out for an entire football season, what is the likelihood that he can recover from whatever it is he's going through and be ready to play football again, either A, for the rest of his career, or B, next season?
Yeah, that's definitely a tougher situation. And like you said, there isn't a lot of public information on it. It's been called a mid-back injury to neck tightness, neck stiffness, muscle spasms. He's had a history of 2 back surgeries to his low back. He's 29. The last low back injury he had was 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, 2017.
3 years ago, yeah.
So that definitely does not bode well for, his, I'd say any team looking at him now is going to second guess that. He'll be 30 in March.
Yeah.
So it's,
well, and
hopefully you can get healthy from that, but
yeah. And the question for 49er fans really is, I feel like I can safely assume the team is ready to move on from him. And we're going to talk about the salary cap situation in a second. But one of the things that I don't think we realize as fans is, we talk about numbers, and we're going to throw out a ton of numbers in a few minutes. But one of the things that we talk about is, what would happen if we moved on from Dee Ford? Basically, if we cut Dee Ford, if we traded Dee Ford, trade is not even really something that I would consider, just because I don't think any team is going to trade for him with that contract. But if they were to cut Dee Ford, and they can, and they would save money doing that, but in order to cut him, he has to pass a physical. So what do you think the likelihood is, after being out with a back injury for an entire season, that he would be able to pass a physical for the team to even be able to cut him?
Well, again, that would, that's one pretty interesting stipulation on contract. I don't know how common that is, but
well, it's not. That's just in general. You can't cut somebody without him passing a physical. Okay. Yeah, because you can't just cut someone and then they're like, well, but now I can't go join another team because I'm injured. Yeah, so that's why they wouldn't be able to cut him without passing a physical.
Yeah, it's, again, without any real details as to what's going on with the back injury, it's really impossible to know what kind of outlook that is for him, and what you can get in return. Maybe as we move into the offseason and the Niners kind of decide what they're going to do with that, they might become a little more forthcoming publicly with what they're dealing with him. Who knows? Because that is a big question as far as his salary cap implications for the team for next year, because big chunk of change they're paying to a very talented guy, but if
They
you
are.
can't get on the football field, that's tough.
Yeah.
I mean, and it seems like both of the guys that we're talking about, both Jimmy Garoppolo and D Ford, when on the field, they are both winners. And Jimmy's a winner, that's proven by his record, and D Ford is, he's spectacular when he's healthy. But I guess the question then becomes, one, Jimmy Garoppolo is not a spectacular enough player or talent to where he overcomes non-availability, and D Ford, even though at like 50%, 60%, teams still have to game plan against him. It seems like when he gets pushed into that situation, he winds up sitting more time than he's playing. So should the 49ers just cut bait with both of these guys, even though I think what you're going to get about $13 million in dead cap money if we cut D Ford.
Man, believe me, we're about to get into some nerd shit because I got tons of numbers for you.
I love it. All right. So,
all right, let's
get
ahead.
into the nerd shit. So,
all right. So the first thing that you have to look at when it comes to the offseason is the salary cap and the salary cap situation. So the cap is going down because the league lost revenue with everything that happened with COVID. And so teams have been operating with an escalating cap for, I think, 7 straight seasons now. And so this will be the first season where the cap has gone down. And, more than likely, if they play next season and and fans are allowed in the stands and everything, the cap is going to go up in 2022. But we're going into 2021. So we have to look at it, and we have to look at, what is the reality of where the 49ers are. So in his press conference today, Lynch did say that the 49ers are operating this offseason as if the salary cap will be at the salary cap floor number that the NFL has already put out. So the NFL a few months ago put out what amounted to, we think the cap's going to be about 185 million, but the floor is going to be 175, meaning it wouldn't drop below 175. So Lynch said, as a front office, we're going to operate as if it is going to be 175. Is it likely to be higher than that? Absolutely. But for purposes here, we're going to look at if the cap is $175 million. And so according to overthecap.com, which is a pretty reliable site that lots of beat reporters and things like that use, the 49ers currently have 36 players with salary obligations for the 2021 season, and a combined dead money hit on the books for 2 players, Quan Alexander and the Catman, Dante Pettis. And so those 36 players that are under contract for 2021, along with the dead money from Quan and Pettis, total $157,754,692. Very specific. And so that means that without any cuts, trades, anything else, right? They are going into this offseason with $17,245,000 in cap space. That's not a lot of money. That's not a lot in terms of flexibility to be able to sign the 38 players that will be free agents this offseason. So what are we talking about in terms of cap hits? So the 5 largest cap hits for the 49ers in 2021 are Jimmy Garoppolo at $26.9 million, D Ford at $20.78 million, Eric Armstead at $12.5 million, Weston Richburg at $11.6 million, and Jimmy Ward at $11 million. Those are the 5 highest paid players that the 49ers have going. So we just talked about D Ford. Is he even going to be able to play? We haven't even touched on Weston Richburg, who had that terrible knee injury in the New Orleans games last year. I believe he tore his patellar tendon, and then never made it back this season. And then outside of those 2, you've got Jimmy Garoppolo, and then you've got Eric Armstead, who's not going anywhere, and you've got Jimmy Ward, who's not going anywhere. So where can the 49ers find savings, right? Because you can't say like, well, we're saving money because because McKinnon is leaving. We're saving money because Juice is leaving. This takes into account all of that stuff. So again, they have 36 players signed and they have 17 million in cap space. So what are some possible cap savings, right? So some ways that teams get cap space, there's three ways. You can cut a guy, you can trade a guy, or you can restructure the contract for somebody, right? And so the question becomes, what are the 49ers going to do in that regard? So let's look at 4 of those 5 players. Because again, Eric Armstead just signed his deal last year. There's not a whole lot you can do about it. His cap hit's going to be $12.5 million. All right. And all this information that I'm giving you is coming from Over the Cap. All right. And so there's 2 ways that you can cut somebody in the NFL. You can cut somebody pre-June 1st and you can cut somebody post-June 1st. And there's the reason why that matters is because if you cut somebody post-June 1st, you are actually able to save a little bit more money because you can spread out that dead money cap hit over the next 2 seasons. So for example, if they were to cut Jimmy Garoppolo pre-June 1st, they would save $24.1 million because they would simply owe him $2.8 million. And then that would be the only dead cap hit. If they were to cut him post June 1st, the dead money would be half of that. It would be $1.4 million. And so it would be a savings of $25.5 million. Or they could restructure. And if they restructure his contract, and in the NFL, and what I thought was interesting is David Lombardi wrote an article about the cap situation. It was like 3 weeks ago or so. And so he operated with some different numbers, but anyway, he said that the 49ers and Carmen policy are actually kind of the trailblazers when it came to restructuring contracts, because in the NFL, what you can do is you can take some of that guaranteed money that you have on a contract and you can convert it to a signing bonus. And when you do that, you are then allowed to spread that signing bonus out over the remainder of the contract. So that's where you save some money. And so if they restructure Jimmy Garoppolo's deal, which, by the way, if they do that, they're basically tied to him through the end of his contract, which for the 49ers would be through 2022. But if they restructured his deal, they'd save $11.8 million. So, if they cut him, they'd save an additional $13 million. But if they restructure it, they would save $11.8 million. And then the one thing that I forgot to mention when it comes to post June 1st cuts, right? The reason why you save more money is because more than likely all of the free agents are already gone by June 1st. And so if you're waiting until June 1st to cut a guy to save some money, you're going to be really kind of shit out of luck because everybody's going to be signed. So the NFL actually allows you to designate 2 post June 1st cuts, but allows you to cut them prior to June 1st, right? So it's called designate. You designate them as post June 1 cuts. And so if they cut D Ford, and again, the caveat here, and I'm going to talk about D Ford and Weston Richburg, the caveat is that in order to cut a player, they have to pass a physical, right? Because again, you can't cut a player who's injured because then the likelihood that they go get signed by somebody else is pretty low. And so they have to be healthy in order for you to cut them. So we have no idea if D Ford can pass a physical. We have no idea if Weston Richburg can pass a physical. But if they can, if you cut D Ford pre-June 1st, that dead money hit is $14.35 million and you save $6.4 million. If you cut him post June 1st or designate him post June 1st, that dead money hit is $4.78 million and you actually save $16 million. And then with Weston Richburg pre-June 1, dead money of $6.9 million and savings of 4.8, and a post June 1st designation would give you $3.5 million in dead money and a total savings of $8.35 million. All right. And then with Jimmy Ward, they could theoretically restructure Jimmy Ward's deal, and that would save them about $5 million. So those 4 things are really the only things that the 49ers can do to save money and increase their cap number, right? They're under the cap number. And so these are the three scenarios that I think would be most likely. Okay. You cut Jimmy, Weston Richburg, and D Ford pre-June 1st, you gain yourself an additional $52.6 million in cap space.
That's huge. That
If you
gives them
cut-
more than the Jags, right? I think it does.
No, I don't think so. The Jags have an exorbitant amount of money. I can look that up for you in a second.
It puts them close.
Yeah. If you cut Jimmy and Ford post June 1 and Richburg pre June 1, that'd be $63 million in cap space. And then the third, and again, I think these are the three likeliest. The third is restructure Jimmy's deal and then cut D Ford and Richburg as post June 1 designations, and that would get you 53.39. Now, the question becomes, what is most likely? And I mean, all they keep saying is that Jimmy's coming back. And honestly, I guess I have to take them at their word, even though, Cliff Kingsbury said Josh Rosen's our guy. And, they flirted with Tom Brady in the offseason. But the problem that the 49ers have right now is they don't have a whole lot of money, right? And so if you move on from Jimmy Garoppolo, then you better have an upgrade available, or you're really kind of setting yourself back. And so Alex, dude, man, that would be unbelievable.
I'm so all aboard that train. Like I think that'd be it'd be a cool story, but it would be an upgrade at quarterback.
Yeah.
For a year, 2 years, hold over, give you a chance to draft somebody, develop somebody.
I'm hard pressed to think Alex Smith is an upgrade over Jimmy Garoppolo, even though I love Alex Smith with the passion of 1,000 burning suns. But I don't think that's an upgrade over Garoppolo. And so personally, I think for me, I think the likeliest scenario is that third one that I talked about, which is restructure Jimmy's deal and then cut Ford and Richburg with post June 1 designations. And that gets you $53 million. And that's cap savings plus the 17 million that they have right now. And that's why, even though we talked about D Ford and whether he'd be back or not, I don't see it happening. And so the question is D Ford going to be healthy enough to cut? And if he's not, it really puts the 49ers in a tight spot because again, they have 38 free agents and an all-pro linebacker in Fred Warner that is eligible for an extension. And if I'm Fred Warner, even though I love football and I love my team, with COVID and everything that's happening, like I'm probably going to be inclined to get mine. Right. And so what does that look like? Right. What does it look like to sign these free agents that we have and also extend Fred Warner? And so it's not an enviable situation for the front office. And I don't know, according to David Lombardi of The Athletic, if the 49ers sign Trent Williams and extend Fred Warner and then backload all those contracts, which basically means like you kick the can down the road to, when the cap is going to go back up, you'd still they would still count around $15 million combined for 2021 based on market value. And I believe that was 20 million annual average value for Trent Williams and 15 million annual average value for Fred Warner. And so, like I said, I think the likely scenario is restructure Jimmy, cut Ford and Richburg. Now you have 53 million in cap space. And now you can start talking about, all right, so which free agents that we have are we going to bring back? Right. What is the order of importance? And so kind of want to end tonight simply looking at which priority free agents should the 49ers target from their own team before we even look at some available free agents in the market. So Tim, what in your opinion is essentially priority 1, 2, 3, 4, and on down the list?
Well, I mean, I have a feeling that our lists are going to be very, very similar in the sense that um, the priorities are you gotta take care of the most important position outside of quarterback, in my opinion, on the offense, and that is left tackle. And Trent Williams graded out this year. If he wasn't the top ranked tackle or the top graded tackle, he was the top graded left tackle. He exceeded all expectations this year. Trent Williams was phenomenal, and he's a guy. Um, he needs to be priority number one, in my opinion. The fact that we're losing so many DBs to free agency, I wish Richard Sherman well. Happy trails. He definitely changed. He set the tone in a way. He kind of changed the demeanor and the way we 49er fans will forever think of Richard Sherman. But I do think he's moving on to other pastures. I think Jason Verrett has shown enough this year to get re-signed.
Mhm.
His injury history is something that will be put into negotiations. Yes, he had one season where he was injury free, which is crazy to think about, that he was our most
In the season
durable.
of injuries, he didn't get injured. That's
He
impressive.
was our most he was our most durable guy. But that is the one piece where you may be able to get him at a slight discount. Other than that, I think he's a top 5 corner in the league that was screwed out of a Pro Bowl spot. Then you start working your way down the line, and I think, these are the really, really debatable ones where you have Kyle Juszczyk, you have K'Wan Williams, you have Kerry Hyder, Ronald Blair, DJ Jones, Jordan Reed. I think all of those guys, out of those 8 guys, I think you have to get 4 of them, and if you get 5 of them, you're sitting pretty darn well going into next year. But my top 4 guys, if it's me, it's Trent Williams 1, Jason Verrett 2, Kyle Juszczyk 3, and K'Wan Williams 4. You just can't over exaggerate the importance of a quality slot corner in today's NFL.
Yeah, and K1 does so much more at that slot corner position than just cover the slot receiver. He's an excellent blitzer. Robert Saleh actually said that K'Wan Williams actually is kind of the key to the defense when he's on the field, and the defense really reacts to whatever it is that he's doing, which I thought was interesting because, again, the slot corner used to be kind of the forgotten position, in a defense, and now it's one of the most important, just because the league is a passing league now, and you're getting tons of 11 personnel and 3-4 wide receivers spread it out and throw the ball down the field. And so our top 4 is actually exactly the same, in the exact same order. Trent Williams they have to re-sign Trent Williams. They traded for him. They gave up a 3rd round pick for him, which isn't a lot because he was a Pro Bowl. He was the highest graded tackle for PFF this season. But they traded for him, essentially knowing if he plays relatively well, we're going to re-sign him. And so Williams has talked a lot about wanting to come back, and I think he loves it here. He loves it in San Francisco. He loves playing for Kyle Shanahan. But I also don't think that he's going to take a discount because, in the same press conference, he also said it might be fun to see what my value is on the open market. And so, I think ultimately they end up re-signing him, not necessarily to a team-friendly deal, but at least a team-friendly structure. Again, like backloaded like crazy. So that they can fit under the salary cap this year. Because again, you're really just talking about trying to fit in 2021, because the cap is probably going to go back up in 2022. In fact, over the cap predicts that it's going to be like 227 million in 2022. So that's a big time difference, which, by the way, I did look it up, Tim. The as it currently stands with a projected over the cap projects the cap to be at like 178 million. The Jaguars have 77 million in cap space, so they're sitting pretty there. But yeah, I think Trent Williams is the priority.
So
go ahead.
With what you were talking about, though, right? If we restructure, if we were to cut Jimmy, if we were to cut Richburg, and we were to cut,
if we cut those three, Richburg, Ford, and Jimmy, and designated Jimmy and Ford as post June 1, that would be 63 million. So still 14 million less than
well, isn't that? Oh, that's not added on to what
that's
we currently
total.
Have
That includes the savings and the 17 that we have now.
Damn it.
So I think Trent Williams, is obviously a priority. And then, like you said, we quite literally the only cornerback that we have signed to the roster right now is Tim Harris Jr., and that's a futures contract. And I think there's a couple other DBs that they signed today to future contracts, but Mosley is a restricted free agent and the rest of them are unrestricted. So again, just like Jeff Wilson Jr., with Emmanuel Mosley, we have the right of first refusal. So if Mosley gets some kind of massive contract on the open market, then more than likely they wouldn't match it. But if he gets a contract from another team, then they have the ability to match it. And if all they have to do is match it, and they can sign him. So I think Mosley's coming back. So, but that's all you have. I mean, you don't even have Akella Witherspoon. You don't even have Dante Johnson. Like, you've got nobody outside of Emmanuel Mosley. And so, like you said, I think Jason Verrett is an important signing, simply because they need corners. And so and honestly, I wouldn't mind. I don't think he's a priority, but I wouldn't mind them bringing Akella back on a, maybe a league minimum, maybe a little bit more.
Prove it,
as a depth piece. I think a lot of free agents are probably looking to sign 1-year deals, going into this offseason, just with an eye towards the cap going up in the following offseason and signing a richer deal then. So, some of these guys may come back on a 1-year deal just simply to try and pursue a Super Bowl with the 49ers, but also with an eye towards earning more in the following offseason when the cap goes back up. But like you said, Williams and Verrett, and then I think Juszczyk is incredibly important to this offense. I don't, again, it's, they signed him to the richest fullback deal in NFL history. They can't afford to do that now. They were able to do that in 2017 because they had just oodles of money to spend. And they don't anymore. So, I think it's important, but at the same time, I don't know that they can afford to pay $5 million a year for a fullback, but they may deem that a priority. And then, and we talked about it already, K'Wan Williams, I think he's going to have a few offers on the open market. So I don't know that they'll be able to match it, but if they can, he's a top 5 slot corner in the league, if not like a top 3, or I think you called him the best slot corner in the league. So, it's hard to talk about not knowing what they're going to do with Jimmy, what they're going to do with Ford, and what they're going to do with Richburg. I think we can safely assume what they're going to do, but because they just simply don't have enough money to sign players and sign, they need $8 million to sign their draft class, or $9 million. And right now they have 17. So that's also why I think you can kind of throw water on the idea of like a Matt Stafford or something like that, simply because if you trade for Matt Stafford, A, you're giving up draft capital, but B, you're still paying him $20 million next season. So the savings that you get going from Stafford to Jimmy, it's like $7 million. There's $5 million because you're going to cut Jimmy, and you still owe him 2.8. So I don't know. It's an interesting offseason. I think it's going to have some long range consequences, and not only do they have all of this intrigue in terms of cap space and players, but what is the front office going to look like if Adam Peters leaves, or if Martin Mayhew leaves, or if both leave? Which, by the way, if Martin Mayhew leaves, that gives us another 3rd round pick. in or three seasons of 3rd round picks if Saleh leaves as well.
Wow.
So I don't know.
Well, hey, Dr. Colin, who would be give us your top 1 or 2 priority free agent signings from the 49ers? Who should we go after?
I mean,
from our own guys.
Yeah, I think you guys covered it pretty spot on there. I mean, Trent Williams is his contribution, and like you said, what they've already kind of committed to him at this point to get him, and kind of hard to just walk away from that at this point. But it'll be interesting. It'll be really interesting to see what this offseason looks like. Brian and I were talking earlier about, kind of how the offseason in baseball is shaping up. And I think we could see something kind of similar with football, just in the sense that, yeah, the salary cap is shrinking this year. Don't really know what role COVID's going to play into 2021 season too, financially, which, all those projections are based on a normal 2021 season, but that's not really given at this point. If still some areas can't allow fans into stands, and so it'll be interesting to see, what approach the teams take to free agency, what approach the players take to free agency. I agree with Ryan in that yeah, there's not much to gain for the players to sign a long-term contract going into this season with that, unless they're given some sort of good guarantee, which in the NFL doesn't really happen, unless you're kind of, unless you're looked at really at a game changer for the team. And so, yeah, exactly. So I agree. I think that idea of trying to restructure Jimmy's deal, and I think he'd probably be agreeable to it, looking at what his prospects were. Missing that the last part of that season doesn't give any other teams a lot of hope to take that on. And knowing that he's already got a relationship. And again, something else we don't really know a whole lot of, what is the quality of that relationship now with Kyle and with Shanahan and Garoppolo. Yeah. How much trust is there between the two of them either way? And, they both know they can succeed together. And so that they have that to at least build on. And so there should be a lot of optimism between them to keep that rolling. You bring somebody else on, you don't know what you're going to get or how it's going to go. There's the Stafford option, maybe
Sam Darnold,
Matt Ryan.
And hey, you never know what Miami's going to do with that number 3 pick. If they're not sold on Tua, they could take, a Justin Fields or a Zach Wilson, whoever the Jets don't take. And then Tua could be available. Although I told Tim, if we trade for Tua, I don't know that I want Mike McGlinchey protecting Tua's blind side. I don't think Tua wants Mike McGlinchey protecting his blind side.
I don't think anybody wants McGlinchey protecting his blind side.
No.
So in that sense, it'll just be interesting to see how free agency in general plays out. How long do players wait? How long do teams wait to really start pushing deals? Because they'll probably all be kind of waiting to see what the kind of COVID situation looks like and how that could play an impact into 2021 finances. And, it'll be interesting.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. And you and I were talking, Colin, you and I were talking before Tim could figure out his internet situation, and before we went live. And I said the off season is actually one of my favorite times of the year, just because it's I used to love to play Madden and simply like do fantasy drafts and then sim seasons and then go into the off season to play GM. And in fact, Madden put out a game back in the early or like mid 2000s, which is actually a long time ago, but where it literally, that's all it was like a GM game. Like you didn't even play the games. You just played GM. So I just really enjoy it. And, for us as new content creators, the off season is going to provide, I think this off season specifically is going to provide a fair amount of content to talk about, especially when it comes to the quarterback situation, the cap situation, like you said, COVID and the long range effects it has on even the 2021 season. Who's gonna replace Saleh? What is the front office going to look like? There's lots of questions that, after 2 days or 1 day into the offseason, we don't have any answers right now. So we will continue to wait to get those answers, and we will continue to provide content.
I just want to add one thing that's kind of interesting here. We can thank the Raiders. This is the twice in 3 years they have bumped us down a draft position by winning in the final week of the season.
Yeah,
and we are behind them again because of that.
Yeah, that game was that we needed the Broncos to win that game. That would have got us to 11, and the Raiders somehow pulled it out of their ass. And thanks, John Gruden. Earning that $100 million right there.
So,
Tim, any last thoughts or words before we cheese on out of here?
I just want to say, if you haven't done so already, please find Brian's article and my article on 49er Web Zone. Give it a read, share it with somebody. We greatly appreciate it. I submitted an article today, and it was the 49ers recipe for success in 2021 includes pepper. That would be Tabor pepper.
Tabor pepper. We gotta get that guy on this podcast, man.
Yeah, I'm trying real hard.
Attaboy.
Just, all you can do is ask. And so we have that content out there. This podcast with the new platform, we're giving YouTube a try, and we're live streaming our podcast now, both video, and then we'll post the audio to our normal locations. But if you have an opportunity to subscribe, to watch, to share, to comment, whatever, like it's great.
Review.
Yeah.
All the good stuff.
We really appreciate it.
Share it with your friends.
What's that, Colin?
Share it with your friends, your family.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody. It'll make for a really great Valentine's Day present in February.
Yeah.
Your girlfriends, your wives. Just I'll take requests if somebody wants me to read something on air, in my silky smooth voice, I'll happily do that for you. But no, we really do appreciate everyone that listens and is providing us with any feedback. We really appreciate it. So, thank you to everybody out there who's stuck with us all season. You're awesome.
Absolutely. And then also we want to thank Colin for coming on with us tonight. Colin, anything for you to plug?
No, I don't have anything to plug other than, stay safe, stay healthy out there. And, I really appreciate what you guys have done this season and putting this together. It's been a pleasure listening to you guys. It's been an honor to be on with you. Let me know anytime you guys want to reach out. And
we got our resident orthopedic specialist for the Denim Dungeon podcast. I love it.
Yeah, I'll give my insight whenever you guys want it or feel it's appropriate.
Awesome.
Hey, I do have one quick question for you, Colin. You did get the COVID vaccine, right?
I did.
And your arm is still attached to your body?
My arm is still attached. I don't have any third appendages growing. No, everything is fine. Just a little bit sore where the injection was for a couple of days, and then that was totally gone. And my wife
still have a soul.
Still have a soul. And now we can protect that soul and not worry about it getting COVID contaminated.
Have you been communicating with Bill Gates through the chip that they put in your arm?
I haven't fully realized how to utilize that thing yet. I don't know if it's a Bluetooth or a Wi-Fi connection. Whatever it is, probably more reliable than Tim's internet. So
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. Fantastic. I love it. Perfect. I am patiently waiting to get my vaccine. I am, and I'm also patiently waiting my parents to get the vaccine so I could drop my kids off at their house again. It's been far too long.
that's it. So in the meantime, we'll all stay diligent, stay healthy, and
That's right. That's right.
do what we can.
All right. So we will still be working on our release schedule. You know, during the season we were doing 2 a week. I don't know if we'll continue to do that in the off season, but we will be back at least once a week as we continue to look at this 49ers preparation for the 2021 season. But until then, and as always, bang bang.
Niner gang.